Hello, and welcome to Skills to Pay the Bills. With today's segment of Resources Unplugged, we'll dig into a unique training process, one designed to assist businesses raising capital. More importantly, businesses going directly to investors without the benefit of a middleman. I am your host, Lorette Farris, co-founder of the Internet Back Office Systems and Services, Inc., or iBoss, an ecosystem developed to provide services and resources to companies raising capital. My co-host today is Jack Wilson, owner and principal of Liquid Capital, servicing the alternative financing needs of growing businesses. Jack and I are going to discuss alternative means to capital and how a lack of information and process management could be the biggest hurdle to capital sufficiency in today's new capital market. We are going to unplug how the Capital Access Boulevard, or CAB, training programs guide capital-seeking entrepreneurs through the process of raising from startup to growth stage capital. Welcome, Jack.
Hello, Lorette, and I'm very happy to be here today.
Yeah, I'm very interested in what we'll be able to put out there on this topic.
Excellent, me too. In your introduction, I noted that you said new capital markets quite a few times. Maybe we can start by helping the audience to understand what that term means.
Absolutely. I like to think that iBoss created the term. However, I use it because in today's market, it's so different companies raising capital than it used to be. Today, entrepreneurs get an opportunity to reach into investors directly, as opposed to the way things used to be that either you need an investment banker or a broker dealer or some intermediary to introduce you to an investor. Regulations and technology have changed and allow entrepreneurs, once they know the process, to get directly to investors that may be interested in what it is that they're doing. To me, that is a new capital market.
Yes, and that's quite interesting. As you know, I'm part of that changing landscape of financial services the businesses are experiencing today. And while my industry has the title alternative financing, our services have become very much mainstream. How do you think that equates to what's happening in the equity capital space for similarly overlooked small businesses and startups?
Think about days gone by when a company, whether it's a new company or existing business, if they needed capital, really the only thought was to go get a loan. Mm-hmm. They'd either go to their bank, they shop around to a couple of other banks, they reach the point that then they reach out for guarantors such as the SBA, things of that nature. But that was the customary way for a company to get to capital. All of a sudden, alternative financing, comes into play, where now companies had an opportunity, whether it was equipment leasing or accounts receivable factoring, like I'm telling you, what happens. But that's what alternative financing did for those same businesses. Now, all of a sudden, again, as I said before, you used to have to find an investment banker or broker dealer or intermediary to get to equity investments. But now, all of a sudden, the businesses, there are rules and regulations and processes that the regs as well as technology have changed the landscape of how they can get to capital. So I believe the same way alternative financing is now a mainstream way to capitalize a business, now all of a sudden the new capital market reaching out to investors directly, I think that's where the similarity is in the loans versus the equity investment market.
Okay, and that's understandable. So what role does CAB, or Capital Access Boulevard, play in this new capital market?
Mm-hmm. So the Capital Access Boulevard, the CABs, were developed to actually teach entrepreneurs and businesses what these processes are that they can now utilize. Because again, you still have, the bulk of your companies are still thinking that equity investments is not something that is attainable for them. And they're mainly thinking it because of the way the old guard system was set up. I want to be able to teach and train them. I want to help them understand how there is a new sheriff. There is a new way for them to consider whether equity investment is the right thing for them, because it's also not right for everyone. But if it's right for you, you shouldn't be stopped because you can't find someone to introduce you to an investor. You need to learn the process that you can go through to get to the capital yourself. And that's what the CABs do. They're designed, Capital Access Boulevard, love the term, that you can guide and direct your own course as it relates to raising the capital that you need.
And that's wonderful. And knowing the options that are available is a key to really being able to make good decisions. So can anyone take this program?
Anyone can take the program because, again, it's a tool to put information out there. So it's information. However, learning it and being able to effectively utilize it is a whole different story. And what I mean by that is you're talking about equity capital, you're talking about investments, you're talking about investors. Well, to be in that space, your business model, what you're looking to do, how you're looking to do, has to be suitable for an investor. If you are opening a t-shirt factory, then you're probably not going to have the kind of revenue that you need in order to get an investor excited about that. But if you're doing franchises, if you're doing multiple locations, all of a sudden you scaled up that operation and now you have a shot at driving the kind of revenue, the kind of market that an investor could be interested in, because now he could see how not only will he get his money back, but there's some return on investment, that is there. So your business needs to be in a space that's considered high growth. 3 to 5 years, you want to be able to reach those platforms that an investor could see, they can get their money back, things of that nature. And again, a lot of times, because the new young startup companies are building their model sometimes based on how much money they think they can get. When you take that barrier out of the way and allow them to really think about what they're trying to do, what they want to do, all of a sudden they can start, assessing the fact that, hey, maybe I can make this a bigger model because now I see that I can get to more capital.
Yes, I like that thought too, really being able to move the barriers away.
Yeah.
So for a CAB participant, what's the expectation for them?
They should expect, again, to learn. I do a lot of presentations and speaking in front of groups and things of that nature, and it is so interesting to me that, more than half of the room I hear, I've never heard that before, And so the initial expectation is that they should expect to hear and understand this other side of capital. Starting a business, growing a business, moving a business, the thought shouldn't only be on loans. It shouldn't only be on debt. Debt actually brings down the valuation of your business. So learning and knowing and walking in to understand how investments work, how investors want to participate, but you, the company, has to provide them with what it is they need to see, feel, or hear to make them feel comfortable enough to put their money in your pocket. So participants should expect to come in to understand the equity side of the market and how capital is utilized that way.
Okay, got it. So then what results now can a CAB participant expect?
Okay, so results that they can expect. First, I would say to you, I'll frame the conversation by putting numbers in it. 100 people attend a CAB because each of them are coming in saying, I want to raise capital, and this is going to show me how to do that.
Right.
Well, what will happen is 50% of them are going to walk out saying, that's not really the capital that works for me. And that's because instead of just understanding what you see in the paper about investments, they start understanding what it really takes and have to accept the fact that then, the equity market probably isn't the right place for me. Those that actually go through the full CAB process, there's going to be another percentage of them that realize it's also not a walk in the park. It is not easy because all of a sudden, when you have somebody else's money in your business, there are other, barriers and other considerations that have to be made because those investors do want some say one way or the other. They don't necessarily want to be in your business, but they want to be about the money that they put into your business. And that could be good or bad, and we can talk about the good and bad part of that also, but those are the things that they can expect. Those participants can expect to really understand what goes on and make some real determinations as to whether, but that's what raising capital is all about. You have to understand all your options. You shouldn't just be looking at one way and how much cost effective is it for you to understand if that's your place by going to a class to learn, as opposed to getting thrown in the process where you're losing time, money, and energy, and then find out that it's not the right way for you.
You're right. You're right. So you mentioned process. So how long is that process and how cost effective is it? And how does that compare to traditional financial advisory services?
Okay. Long answer.
Okay.
I have a long answer for you on that one. So we'll come back to that, when we come back from the break. But there are definitely a lot of considerations that a company has to figure out when we get to that place.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to re-engaging.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jack. We are going to take a short station break, then return with Jack Wilson of Liquid Capital to continue unplugging resources you thought were beyond your reach. Stay tuned, as you won't want to miss one word.
They say it takes a village. We focus on the truth about things that are happening in the DMV through the voices of the people who live, work, and play on Main Street. Tune in every week to discover how the community is coming together for the greater good of every resident.
Welcome back. You are watching Skills to Pay the Bills and today's segment of Resources Unplugged. Our special co-host today is Jack Wilson of Liquid Capital. Jack, we ended the last session with a great question, so let me hear it again.
Great. We're going to ask this question again. I've been anticipating the answer, and hopefully the audience has too. So how long is this process that we've talked about, and how cost effective is it, and how does it compare to traditional financial advisory services? Now, I know that's a lot of questions, so let's break it down.
Okay.
That first one again is, how long is the process, and how cost effective is it?
Okay. So we've designed the CABs where they are a 6-month program. And that is because a CAB encompasses, from the beginning, your business plan, your executive summary, your pitch deck, because those are what I call engagement documents that you can't get to capital, whether it's equity or debt, without it. But once you have that done, now you have to learn how to pitch. You have to learn how to speak to investors, so we also take them through training them on how to pitch their idea to investors. But now you also have to start building a database of investors. We teach them how to build that database. You can either try to raise capital from accredited investors or unaccredited investors? Well, you need to start building a database. With a brokerage firm, you have brokers that reach out to their clients in order to get interest in a company to raise capital. Well, if you're raising capital directly yourself, you got to put something in place that's going to help you do that. So we help you to put together those databases of potential investors to reach out to. But now you have to market to those investors. Again, you don't have brokers reaching out for you, you're doing it yourself. We teach you how to market to those investors. Now the investors are interested and want to give you money. We teach you how to take their money. Now you have their money, you have real investors. We teach you how to set up both an investor relations program as well as how to do your ongoing compliance. Because now that you're using other people's money, there are things you have to make sure you're doing regulatory-wise, as well as things that you have to do to keep your investors interested, because you also raise capital in tranches, which means the first time you need a certain amount of money, you got those investors, you have it. Well, you want to keep them happy, because a year and a half from now, when you need the next tranche of money, those are going to be the first people you want to go to. So learning the process from beginning to end is what the CAB does. So it does take 6 months. As far as cost effectiveness, again, previously you would go to an intermediary. So let's say you're trying to raise $1 million. Generally, an intermediary introducing you to investors would charge a customary 10%. So that means you spend $100,000. Well, you could learn how to do the process from beginning to end for less than $5,000. So I think that's a very cost-effective mechanism to utilize.
I see. That's a good answer to that question. And I know you touched on a piece of this next question. How does it compare to traditional financial advisory services?
Okay. So yes, and on top of the fact that, and I don't believe there's anything wrong with having an intermediary, but that's if you can get there. So the other difference is, because you can now go after the capital directly yourself, it's just a matter of learning the process. All of a sudden, you're no longer caught in that spiral of broker-dealers or investment bankers are not looking at you if you don't have a certain amount of revenue in your business, or you're not looking to raise a certain amount of capital, things of that nature. There are very few companies that can actually get to an investment banker. But you also have situations that they call private placement agents. And those are agents and or agencies that, with your private placement memorandum, which in that business, that's just the document that you use to raise capital, that they would then go and shop your document. But again, once you're doing that, that means somebody else has the control as to when you're going to get your capital and where it's going to come from, instead of, again, you learning how to do it yourself, and now you have all the control of how that's operating. Because there's just been too many people who have been dissatisfied when they've reached out to intermediaries. They didn't get the capital. They spent a lot of time, money, and energy to reach the end, and they have nothing to show for it. Well, if you can take that control yourself and manage the process, if you're a successful business and you know how to sell your product and service, all this is learning how to sell your securities. Okay, so you take control.
I understand now. That really does help me. Now, there's a term that we'd like to get your thought on, is this general solicitation. How is that, what does that term mean, and how is it used when raising capital?
So that's part of the big thing that has happened, again, in that framing of the new capital market. Previously, when a company raising capital directly is not new for companies. The new piece is, now companies have the ability to do that and use general solicitation. So back in the day, if I could use that term, back in the day, you could put together your private placement and now you're ready to raise capital. But if you didn't have a database of potential investors that you knew, then what you have is a document. Today, the regulation changed via the Jobs Act of 2012 that gave the ability for certain raises, certain vehicles you want to use, that all of a sudden you could do general solicitation. So what that now means is that same private placement, all of a sudden you can put together a full-blown marketing program in order to, you can use print ad and emails and Facebook and LinkedIn and any of the rest of that in order to let people know that you're trying to raise capital. Could you be interested? Let's talk. So now you can use general solicitation where in the past you couldn't. So you don't have to know high net worth individuals all of a sudden now because you can market to them.
I understand. So there's a new phrase and term that most of us now have a better understanding of, so thank you. Now, it seems like there's a lot of rules and regulations that one needs to understand just to make sure we're on the right side of the law. How could one kind of sift through all of that and then effectively find and use investors?
That, again, is a big part of what we work at helping businesses understand and taking them through the CAB process. The rules and regulations are endless because you have to look at all security regulations. The SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, every state has its own level of security regulations. There are self-regulatory agencies, so you do have to be mindful of all. What we do through the CAB process is we help you to understand with what you're doing and what you're trying to do, which regulation might be more suitable for you. And now all of a sudden you really only have to understand that particular regulation. And I sort of equate it to, we're in the DC metropolitan area where you have a lot of government contractors. Well, your government contractors understand the FARs. They understand the rules and regulations they have to play by to be a government contractor. That to me is all the security regulations are. If you want to, I'll throw some terms at you, if you want to do a Reg D 506C to raise $5 million, you just have to understand what the rules tell you can do and you can't do, and that's what you do. Versus if you want to do a Regulation A and raise up to $50 million, you just have to know what the rules and regulations tell you can or can't do and follow that.
Wow, I really appreciate the education I'm getting right here on all of this. So these programs sound fascinating. Where and when are these programs administered?
So the CABs are being done on the CABs are actually now a virtual training program. We did our initial CAB in November, and thank you, Jack, for being a part of that. And what happened with the participants that went through that program, again, most of them were blown away to start understanding a lot of these pieces. I've been meeting with most of them on a monthly basis since then, continuing to help them to build their investor database. They are each now starting to reach out to potential investors and putting together their capital formation plan. So now it is a virtual program that people can log into and be guided on a weekly basis through the next step and the next step. And we continue to do expert forums on a quarterly basis where the same people can come into a live session to hear some experienced people talk to them about what they should be thinking about in putting together the different documents, as well as what their model looks like, how that model will be viewed by potential investors, and things of that nature. So the quarterly forums and the virtual program allows companies to have access to this kind of information and walk through what it is that they need to walk through to get to the capital that they need for their businesses.
That's excellent. And being a business owner myself, I know how precious my time is. So you've made it so that even a very busy business owner can have access to this.
Yeah.
So we talked about that program, the last program. Can you tell us about some of the recent CAB experiences? Maybe where are some of them now?
It's very interesting. There was one particular company that thought they were ready to raise capital. And as they started going through the process, they continue to believe they're ready, but now they understand that, oh, this is a process, not an event. And so they're walking through the paces, and it's really heartwarming watching how they are taking to the role that they have to take to get there. So they are going to be so much better when they start engaging with investors, because the investors will even see they know what they're doing now. Someone else is not doing it for them. Versus I have another participant that went through the CAB that did realize that she was nowhere near ready in order to raise the capital that she thought she could raise. So learning what it's all about is panning out for these businesses to get to where they need to be.
That's great to hear, Lorette.
Yeah. Jack, thank you so much for coming on with me. I'm looking forward to us doing this again.
Me too. Thank you.
Wonderful. It has been a pleasure to have Jack co-host today. Liquid Capital is part of the alternative financing industry that helps to make up this new capital market. I thank our audience for hearing today's message, and I pray you use this information to your greatest advantage. Thank you again for watching Skills to Pay the Bills and today's segment of Resources Unplugged, Capital Access Boulevard.